So,
I feel like
mean, at this point, you know, in your career, you've been doing this for about 15 years now.
Where does the time go?
Yeah, so I mean, how has the anime industry, the voice acting industry changed and evolved in that time? What's different?
I think there are so many things that are different about it. It's kind of hard to pinpoint, but one of them is the way to get into it now. I kind of fell into it by accident because it was such a small, relatively niche industry when I started that I was kind of discovered. Because I wasn't even trying to be a voice actor at the time. I had a whole other career in something, and I'd been an actor on stage for most of my life at that point, but I hadn't really done anything in a couple of years or more. When, you know, this guy that I knew that worked for Funimation was like, "Hey, do you want to come and do this acting thing over here? Like, we need some people." Because they were getting Funimation at the time. Was getting more and more properties, and they didn't.
I mean, this is 2005. This is like the middle of sort of a boom.
Exactly. So they're getting a lot of properties, but there wasn't. But the talent pool wasn't that large. So you had a lot of actors doing double duty or triple or whatever, and they were trying to. Well, we're overusing actors because I mean, like, you know, 10-hour days is a lot. So like, we need to expand, I guess. So you know, they just sort of. This guy knew me. We'd been friends for a few years, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to come in?" And I was like, "Yeah." But long and short of it. And so that doesn't happen anymore. Now it got, in the past 15 years, it has gotten huge.
Yes.
So that now it's more like I would guess, a traditional film or television industry where there's a huge waiting list to get in and audition. And with the advent of simul-dubs, broadcast dubs now that Funimation kind of ushered in, the deadlines are so strict that it's really hard to get in the door. It used to be not easy, but easier than it is now, and so that's a big change. But one of the other change I really like, though, is simul-dubs, especially with shows like My Hero Academia, have really kind of made voice actors for dubbing cool in a way that they hadn't been before. Because I guess the perception was for the longest time that, you know, there was this very much you were either sub or dub, and you were hardcore one or the other. And if you liked dubs, you weren't as cool. You didn't really know. You weren't really appreciating the show. So dub actors were kind of seen as interlopers in
That's
a way.
Good word for it.
And you know, we had to kind of compete with that a lot. And so I guess the way, you know, back in the day, we were an audio option on a Blu-ray, and now we're usually the first impression someone has of the show. And so it's changed. It's very different. Dubbing has gotten cool. And I don't know how that happened, but thank God. So that's I don't know. So simul-dubbing it's a crazy process, and I think everyone's still trying to figure it out. But I think some of the benefits have been marvelous. I mean, look at cons now. Look how huge cons are getting. It used to be you'd go and then a couple thousand people over a couple of days, and now it's a huge business. So it's crazy. I feel a little like silent film actors must have felt in the early days when, you know, you were lucky, maybe something I do will be in a penny arcade on a boardwalk somewhere that, you know, people watch, and then suddenly it goes in a few years to being the premier form of entertainment that everyone consumes, and so your face becomes iconic. You know, there's no way they could have known that was going to happen. They're just like, people know who I am now? So that's kind of seems to be happening here. I'm reluctant to make that comparison. It sounds like I'm amazing, but the industry seems to have it's gotten so mainstream now in a way that I was never prepared for. And we're still trying to be like, really? They care? Oh, that's great. Awesome. We care. It's nice that everyone is, you know, agrees with us.
Do you get recognized, and like, does that surprise you that you get recognized?
Yes and yes. Now, at cons, I guess it doesn't surprise me because anime fans tend to be very devoted, and so they know what you look like, and they know that you have 2 French bulldogs or that you're engaged, you know, things like that, because they're very dedicated, and God love them. For voice actors, that doesn't happen in most other industries because it's kind of an anonymous art, unless you're lucky enough to be in a really, you know, hit prelay show or something like that. But when it happens in public, where I'm like out to eat or at Starbucks, and someone's like, J Michael Tatum, and I immediately go, oh God.
Like, you're not ready for it.
No, I'm not ready for it. At a con, you know, it's the job. So I'm like, hey, how are you? But I become like Don Knotts in public. Oh, I mean, hi, how are you? I'm like, what I do? So it's kind of weird. I was out to eat with my family once, not long ago. We'd taken my mom out for dinner, and we were all around this big round table, kind of like this, and I'm sitting next to my sister-in-law, and I was talking to my nephew, and then I get this tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and my sister-in-law is pointing out this young girl behind her that is just kind of standing there doing this, and I was like, and you know, and I'm with my family, so I'm in family mode, which I'm like, yeah, we're all loud and kind of crass and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, oh, hi, how are you? And my sister-in-law was like, what was that? How did that happen? And my sister-in-law was, oh no, you should ask her to come and eat with us. I'm like, no, that's we'll just.
See, that's the
her.
family doesn't understand.
So they have no frame of reference, and it's kind of adorable. So it does happen. It does happen. Not enough that I need to go out in disguise, but but every now and again.
Imagine when you get married, it's gonna be like, okay, they took them off the market.
Oh my God, right?
So how's the years been with everything from the first anime you did to now? Look at this.
Yeah, it's crazy. I still feel so new to it though. That's what's kind of odd. Part of it's my age. I'm kind of an age now where time just telescopes, and I'm like, what?
We're around the same age.
Has it been 4 years already since that thing? You know, Brandon and I have been together for 7, and that's weird to think about because we're kind of still in the honeymoon phase.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, well, we must be doing something right then. But yeah, it's weird. Time gets away from you when you're enjoying yourself and when you're fulfilled by your job, as I'm lucky enough to be. So it's weird to
From
think.
first role to last role, like what was your most favorites and everything?
It's an impossible question to answer because I think at this point I've done almost 300 roles, if not more. It's so hard to keep track of the number.
You got the podcast too. Right?
I got the podcast too. It's my second podcast, and they're all part of me. So I think of them as part of myself. I don't really distinguish between them except in their context. I'm like, that's their story, that's his story. So it's impossible to pick a favorite because they're all my favorite. I like to say my favorite is my next role.
Okay, that works.
If I can talk about one of my favorite roles of yours, it's Iida from My Hero, who's my boy. I actually almost wore like the UA school uniform because I appreciate any cosplay that lets me wear glasses. When you first signed on to do My Hero Academia, obviously the manga had sort of taken off in Japan at that point.
Right.
But I don't know that anyone could have really foreseen My Hero Academia becoming this sort of like cultural touchstone worldwide that it's really become. Are you like, what has your reaction been to what that fandom and what that series has become?
Well, first of all, it's such a good show.
Yes.
And every single one of us that are in it really love it and believe in it. We kind of love the message it sends. And we love the fan base because, I mean, hands down, the My Hero fans tend to be, like, they've absorbed the lesson of that show. They are the kindest, nicest people to us, to each other. And it's just sweet to see because, not all fandoms necessarily are. Right. Most, but not all. Yeah. But the My Hero fandom, and it's such a wide range of age groups. You have little kids that are watching it and taking something away, and you have adults that are watching it and getting the same experience. And so it just seems to have such a wide appeal. And I think when we started working on it, that was the hope that it would take off. You always hope that your show will do well, but I don't think any of us imagined it would be this big because I don't even know how to describe how big it is.
Right.
As we go somewhere, I was at a panel with Justin and several of the other UA actors at the time, and they had us in this atrium, and it was like a rock concert, and I was like, I've never. We looked at each other, we were like, what is our life? What is going on?
You're living the dream.
But it's really encouraging to see it because I can't tell you how often as an actor you work on something you really believe in and it just doesn't really catch on.
Sure.
It's a lot. I mean, that's in fact 99.9% of the shows you work on don't really get the following that you hope. So it's really nice to be in a show that you love and are proud of, and also the rest of the cast are really cool, so we like hanging out. It's like we don't have to like go and do like appearances with people we don't like, because it's always a concern. We're like, oh god, I got to be on a panel with that person. No, we all love each other. So when we connect at cons like this, we'll all go out and do dinner and stuff and hang out. We're like, it's great to see you. Like,
now, you've also been involved with Dragon Ball. I mean, would you at all compare My Hero to Dragon Ball, or would you? In
terms of reach, yeah, definitely. I mean, if you had to kind of look at the timeline of like the big waves of anime popularity, I think Dragon Ball was one of the biggest, and then followed, I guess, by Pokemon, which was huge and still is, and then now you have My Hero. So it seems to, and I know there's a lot of shows in between there
sure.
that have caught on, but those seem to be the big ones, what I like to refer to as the gateway anime. The shows that people that don't watch anime or think of themselves as anime consumers will get into and be like, oh yeah, that's I love that show.
Yeah.
Oh, it's anime? Oh, who cares? It's amazing,
Right, yeah.
And so I mean, definitely based on just how. Because the wave isn't stopping. Normally, when something is this popular, it takes off and then it fizzles out after a season or two or something.
Sure.
But the quality of each season has been consistent enough that it's held on to that spot, and it's still kind of captured. It's still capturing the same audience time and time again, but bringing new ones in. So I think it's going to be around for a while.
Could
and
it
I
be
think
because
it's
it has the
gonna be-
flair of the X-Men, because it is mutations and everything?
Sure.
Because a lot of kids are now today, they find out that they're different and everything, and they want to know somebody like them.
It speaks to that. I think it speaks to everyone. I think every kid, especially when you're in school, you're trying to figure out who you are and where you fit in that kind of larger dynamic, and how to play that game of how to be true to myself, whatever that means, but also how to fit in. And that's a struggle I think everyone can relate to. But it's also about kind of finding your power, that show, and like how to do it. And Deku is such a great symbol of someone that had no hope whatsoever to be a hero, and here they are. Like the protege of the hero.
Right.
So I think it's a great message, and I like to compare it. It's like X-Men meets Hogwarts kind of thing. It's got a lot of that, but it's still doing its own thing incredibly well.
The server crashed the night this series, the season 2. Yeah, everyone said it crashed the minute they went for the first episode.
God, it was just amazing. It's just such a great show. Iida, like you start and you kind of know this. I relate to Iida a great deal, almost embarrassingly.
Almost looked like him too. It was like
it wasn't very inspired casting. To be honest, like you kind of look and act like him. You should do it, but sometimes it feels like the creator must have followed me around with a sketchbook and just drawing me into the bushes or something while I'm doing my thing.
And now his hair is blue.
His hair is blue. He's got the same. I talk with my hands a lot. I have that same. I'm very much
I was watching. I was like,
the hall monitor. That's me. I'm like, is everyone cool? Everyone line up. Everyone fine, okay, cool. Everyone. That's always been. And we'll be recording the show, and Kali, the wonderful director, will laugh, and I'll be like, "Why?" It's just we're watching the preview, and she's like, "I've seen you do that exact thing." I'm like, no, you haven't. Shut up. It's not true. But yeah, it's just such a joy to work on that show. It really is, and to connect with fans that love it. So it's kind of the perfect storm for those of us involved.
Latin Shock, you were on in Evangelion, the what was it? Yeah. I was looking. I was like, wait a minute, no, that was one of your early ones too, right?
Kind of midway for me, because it was a re-envisioning of
because that poor show has been re-envisioned so many times.
Yeah, it was one of re-envision number 5 or 6 or something like
My
that.
class at Lehman talked about it. That was one of our topics for anime and everything. And I said, I think I know that voice. And he's like, what do you mean you know that voice?
I've had a very retroactive career. I've gotten to be involved in really popular anime
After it's
Right.
I'm like, that's kind of the way to go about it. I'm like, oh. So in a way, it's kind of fun to be part of My Hero, because that's the one that's like, oh, we didn't know it would be as popular
Right
as it was. No, it's not very. But I've got to go back and be roles in shows that were really popular, Pokemon and Dragon Ball.
Are there any others you're going to be guest voicing on?
Not that I can tell you.
Because
There's bound to be.
I'm hoping for Dr. Stone.
I am in Dr. Stone.
I didn't hear it. That's what
I'm playing Magma.
it is?
Awesome.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. And Brandon,
nice.
my fiance, is playing the magician guy. I forget his name. Gin? Gin is his name? Gin,
yes.
yeah.
I thought the
And he's
voice
the-
sounded
yes.
familiar.
Yeah, so and Brandon's now in the current season of My Hero as Night Eye. So,
good.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's
man.
killing it. He's so good. I'm so proud.
Because I knew his voice. I was like, no.
Yep, that's me. I get around.
If I could pivot into video games for a second.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because you also do Borderlands.
Uh-huh.
And I have not personally been the biggest Borderlands fan. I'm a big gamer myself. And the Borderlands fandom, lost their minds when, 3 even leaked. So, what has the Borderlands experience been for you?
I will tell you, I haven't done a lot of video games. I've just done a handful, but working for Gearbox is hands down one of my favorite experiences as an actor. I walk out of that studio and I feel like an actor, which is not always the case with this job. I mean, it's a job, so you have good days and bad. But Joel McDonald, the voice director for that franchise, just, I mean, he is an actor himself and very much an actor's director. You'll have the writers in the room with you and they love Hammerlock. God love them. They just adore Hammerlock because they're like, oh my God, just because that voice gives me, the actor, permission to do a lot of crazy things because that's every actor has that permission voice.
Sure.
You're like, oh, this is the mask I can wear and I'll do anything in this mask. It's your alter ego. And that Hammerlock's voice is that for me. And so the writers are encouraged to be like, oh my God, say this. Oh, wait, say this. Say this. Because they'll know I'll go, anywhere with it they want. But man, you walk in there and it's just a fun experience to record it. They're very, very interactive with the talent. Like they will talk you out. Like, what do you feel about this? Especially in the case of Hammerlock, who is a gay character in a relationship with another man. And they are very, throughout the whole process of recording 3. I mean, his sexuality was alluded to in 2 and the DLC, but it's very much out there for all the world to see in 3, which I think is very bold and long overdue. But they were very inclusive. They were like, let's talk about this. Is that a line you feel comfortable with saying? Do you think that's a fair representation?
That's awesome.
I wasn't having to play, some writer's idea of what a gay man sounds like. I was getting to be, I was getting a say in it.
Right.
And I didn't have to change much because they're very sensitive writers.
Awesome.
They're very, very keyed in. And that game is, when you stop and think about it, that game has to be one of the most inclusive games that's ever been on the market because there's not a single character, playable or otherwise, that is heteronormative.
Sure.
There might be 1 or 2, but most of them fall in some other, area, and they're just treated like people.
Right.
What a shock.
Concept.
Yeah. Who knew?
As a big queer myself, I mean, I've certainly noticed over the last 5 years or so that in video games and anime to a slightly lesser extent, but nonetheless, that there has been such a push for inclusivity.
Yeah.
So I guess I'd just like to get your thoughts on that. I mean, with anime, it's like, okay, like we had Yuri on Ice, which seemed like sort of like an outlier in the industry itself.
Sure.
And even that, there was like
and even that there was,
explicitly.
I'm hoping for Given.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give me a dub of Given.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just here in the States, at least, not just in the States, but it's people are more concerned with. I think now that having been a gay kid, grew up in a time when it was not advisable to be out. Because I came of age in the 80s and 90s when we were just the smoke was just beginning to clear from the AIDS crisis, and that defined how we were seen.
Of course.
And it was kind of awful. So I was out then just because I've always been that kind of person. But now it's changed so much. Like now there's a niche, and now it's like I feel like when these creators get into the business who are like, no, we want to represent those people. I think there's a time. In any kind of representation, and it evolves. Like I think you have creatives that want to represent these, this type of person, but they're not quite sure how to do it, so they shy away because they don't want to do a disservice.
Right.
But then as they start talking and getting out there and stuff, and it becomes more like, hey, how do you want to be represented? How do you see yourself? And they take more and more risks. Because we went for, in mass media entertainment, gay people went from being the butt of the joke, if they were even